Breathe for a second, faithful, because this is one of those days where the headline isn't the whole story. It's the little stuff that can tilt an entire week before the ball is even in the air. You've got one absence that punches the defense right in the chest, a maybe on offense that changes the way you call plays, a surgery update that makes you wince, and then this sneaky opportunity that might be sitting there like, hey, don't ignore me. And yeah, there's also a name being floated that would have the Bay arguing until midnight. So let me ask you, are you playing this weekend bold, or are you playing it careful and praying the next round is when the stars come back? If you're riding with the red and gold, tap like, hit subscribe, and throw your take in the comments, because this one is going to split the room. You know that moment where the fan base says, all right, we can get through this, but everyone's quietly doing the math anyway? That's exactly where the 49ers faithful woke up today. The guy everybody wanted to see active isn't going to be out there Saturday night in Seattle. And it's not just a missing jersey. It changes the whole personality of how you play defense. Fred Warner has been ruled out for the playoff game at Lumen Field against the Seahawks. And before anybody goes straight to, oh no, here we go, Kyle Shanahan was pretty clear. There wasn't a setback. Warner was limited on Wednesday, didn't go on Thursday, and Shanahan said he looked good in that Wednesday session. So no, this isn't full-on panic. It's that playoff kind of caution that still feels awful when you're the team missing the all-pro in the middle. What matters here is what Shanahan said next. He said he feels confident Warner could be back for the NFC Championship game if the Niners advance. That's not a guarantee, but it turns this week into a calculated hold and hope. Survive now, get your heartbeat back later. And don't overlook the leadership part. Warner is traveling with the team to Seattle to be there with the guys the whole trip. In January, that presence is real. It hits the locker room, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But the offense has its own pressure point too. Ricky Pearsall is questionable after missing the last 2 games with an aggravated PCL issue. Shanahan said he's seen improvement, but he's not acting like Pearsall is suddenly 100%. And Shanahan was blunt about how he operates. He's not putting a guy on some exact snap count in a playoff game. At the same time, he admitted the obvious. He understands where Pearsall is physically, and the way he's used might have to look different than it would if he were fully healthy. And Pearsall sounded like a guy who expects to play. He said he's been in every practice this week, and he even pointed out that last week he was out there but couldn't really lift his leg well. This week, he said, felt different. More optimism, more confidence. So now you're staring at the real debate. Do you push a player who can open the field, or do you play it safe and accept a slower, tighter night against a Seattle defense that can make an offense feel stuck in mud? And, like this week needed one more thing, there's the George Kittle update. Kittle underwent surgery this week to repair his Achilles injury. Shanahan said he texted with him, said Kittle was in good spirits, and that everything went really well. The early word is it was a very successful surgery, and there's a chance Kittle could come back sooner than people used to think with an Achilles. Pearsall even said he FaceTimed Kittle after the procedure, and Kittle was upbeat, playing video games, sending funny pictures, which, honestly, yeah, that sounds exactly like Kittle. So that's the board right now. Warner out this week, Pearsall living in that uncomfortable maybe, and Kittle starting the long grind back. And somehow the locker room is trying to turn that stress into fuel. Here's the thing, the next layer of this ties directly into how thin this defense feels right now, because there's a veteran name being floated that lines up perfectly with what everyone's worried about. While the faithful is still processing who won't be there right now, and who might only show up later, one name keeps popping up in a way that's almost annoyingly logical when you zoom out. Not a young prospect, not a shiny future move, just experience, and a decision that might be coming quicker than people think. Khalil Mack came back to Los Angeles hoping to chase a ring with the Chargers. But that roster isn't there yet. Not close. And when a veteran like that realizes the timeline doesn't match the window, the hard conversations start. Mack's resume is real. Former first-round pick, one of the premier edge rushers of this era, 9 Pro Bowls, 113 career sacks. That doesn't disappear just because the calendar flips. Is he the same wrecking ball he was years ago? No. Age always shows up, and he dealt with an injury in the 2025 campaign. But that's not the same thing as being finished. In playoff football, What matters is knowing exactly where the pressure points are, when to win, how to set an edge, how to close out a drive. Max still brings that kind of know-how. And even the idea of him being in your pass rush rotation changes how an offensive line has to think on third down. Then you look at San Francisco. This defense has been living through attrition. Warner out right now, Nick Bosa dealing with wear and tear, a rookie like Mykel Williams still developing, and yet the Niners have been competing for a Super Bowl anyway. That tells you about the culture and the system. It also tells you how close to the edge this group is being pushed. You can't keep asking the same guys to survive another season held together with tape and good vibes. That's why Max starts to make sense for the Niners. He wouldn't need to be the guy every down. He wouldn't need some massive snap load. Honestly, that's probably the point. Specific packages, key downs, high leverage moments, third and long, red zone, end of half drives, where a veteran pass rusher can tilt a possession. And there's the mentoring side too. A guy like that teaches just by being in the building. No speech needed. Depth wins January. It's not glamorous, but it's true. And if San Francisco loses more defensive talent looking toward 2026, having an experienced postseason presence ready to plug into the rotation matters. This isn't about chasing a headline. It's about not ending up squeezed the exact same way we're watching right now. So the question isn't, is Max still a superstar? The question is, do the 49ers want to stop living on the edge defensively? Because if they do, this kind of idea starts to feel less like noise and more like a need hiding in plain sight. And speaking of needs turning into opportunities, let's talk about the guy who just went from quiet pickup to we might not survive without him. There was a moment last week that made a lot of people rewind and go, wait, seriously? Because when the offense needed somebody to break the predictable script, it wasn't the obvious name. It was Demarcus Robinson. And it wasn't just a decent game. In the wild card win over Philadelphia, Robinson had his biggest game of the season. 6 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. But the real impact hit early. That 61-yard grab on the first possession set the tone, flipped the energy, and forced Philly to respect something beyond the usual quick stuff. And a few plays later, Robinson was in the end zone again. That sequence told everybody. San Francisco didn't show up to be a side character. Now look at the context. Pearsall's status is still uncertain. Kittle is done for the season. So Robinson stops being a nice bonus and becomes a real part of the plan. He and Juwan Jennings have to be Shanahan's top receiver threats this week. Neither is a pure burner, but both can win contested catches, body defenders, and protect the ball. And that's exactly what you need against a Seattle defense that held this offense to 3 points just 2 weeks ago. And yeah, the weird part is, this wasn't supposed to be the story. Robinson was quiet for most of the year. Part of that was missing the first few games because of a suspension. Part of it was other weapons being available later. And it was fair, totally fair, for people to wonder if San Francisco whiffed on that free agent ad. The season-long numbers didn't scream difference maker. 276 receiving yards and 1 touchdown on 22 catches. But maybe he saved his best for the playoffs. And here's a wrinkle that feels almost superstitious, but it matters. Robinson has made the playoffs and played in at least one postseason game in every single season of his NFL career. Chiefs, Ravens, Rams, he's been around winning football. That's not luck. That's a player who knows what January feels like. The 49ers have needed plenty of luck just to get here, with all the injuries they've fought through. Being one win away from another NFC championship feels borderline unreal. But if they want to keep this run alive, Robinson can't fade back into the background. He has to be a problem again. He has to create chunk plays, pull coverage, force Seattle to defend the whole field. Because sometimes the difference between packing up and pushing the playoff run one more week is the guy nobody was circling in September. And that leads right into the other piece of this puzzle. Because while everybody's staring at Warner's timeline, there's a comeback on the other side of the ball that could change the entire math of what this offense can even do in Seattle. While everyone's holding their breath for any sign of Warner, I'm telling you there's another return that could be just as decisive for Saturday night, maybe even more, because it touches every snap Brock Purdy takes. And it's not coming from the middle of the defense. It's coming from the trenches. and from the part of the offense that creates real explosive answers. Before the upset over the Eagles, it felt like the 49ers needed two blue-chip guys back to have any shot. Left tackle Trent Williams